Good afternoon. My name is Mike Wilson. I'm a member of the Tohono O'odham Nation. I'm here with David Garcia, also a tribal member. We're with the Tohono O'odham Human Rights Observers. The reason that we're here today on the Nation at the Rodeo and Fair is we're trying to distribute information, and also we're trying to get information out to the communities, out to tribal members, concerning the systematic human rights violations of tribal members and non-tribal members by United States Border Patrol agents. We know that this has been going on for several years. We know also because last year the Tohono O'odham Nation and the United States Border Patrol co-hosted 2 town hall meetings where tribal members came forward voicing complaints against the Border Patrol. So we're holding the Border Patrol accountable for human rights violations, but we're also holding the governments of the Tohono O'odham Nation. This is district governments and this is the tribal governments. We're not holding the Border Patrol accountable, and we also hold the governments, the tribal governments, accountable for not protecting Tohono O'odham citizens. Tribal members have gone forward, have made complaints against the Border Patrol to their district representatives, to their district councils, to the legislative councils, to the domestic affairs committee, and even to the executive office, to the chairman's office of the Tohono O'odham Nation. And over the last several years, nobody has done absolutely nothing to try to rectify the human rights violations or to protect tribal members. And this has been going on for years. And so if the tribal government will not protect its own citizens, it's the responsibility and the duty of tribal members to step forward. So that's what we're trying to do. We are stepping forward and trying to protect ourselves because our tribal governments do not. Our tribal governments, all they do is talk about human rights violations, and they think that that's the end of the story. But as elected officials, they have a responsibility to see these to the end. My fear as a Tohono O'odham tribal member is that the Tohono O'odham Nation, unless this is corrected, is becoming Border Patrol Nation. This is who we are, and this is who we're becoming, because nobody is standing up to the United States Border Patrol or Homeland Security.
So what's been the response by the tribal government and the Border Patrol from the testimonies at the hearings?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I went to both town hall meetings. I even went to the Border Patrol town hall meeting at Babakiri High School. Babakiri High School hosted their own teen town hall meeting, and it was the same narrative, the same scenario as the 2 on the reservation. The Border Patrol was saying, you know, we're listening to your complaints, and then the Legislative Council, the Domestic Affairs Committee representatives will say, you know what, we want to hear these by tribal members, and we want you to submit. There is a complaint process, but you must submit those complaints in writing. That may be true, but what happens to them? What happens to them is they end up in a black hole, called indifference. The Legislative Council wants to go through the public process to look and act like they're doing something, but they're doing absolutely zero. Why? Because these human rights violations have continued since the last 2 town hall meetings. So it sort of demonstrates the ineffectiveness of the Legislative Council and the executive branch also.
Now, a few years, I think it was 2010 was when an issue that you were and David were involved in came to light, and that went through that process with Arturo Garcia.
Yeah.
What can you refresh us about that and what the situation is now?
Yeah, what happened in January 2010, Arturo Garcia was, this happened on the Tohono Road going to below San Miguel. And what had happened, Art was at the bus stop, and he had about 40 minutes to wait for his daughter to be dropped off. It was his turn to pick his daughter up from it was the end of the school day, so he was waiting for his daughter at a designated bus stop. And because he works out there for some of the Cattlemen's Association, he had time to clean his rifle. So he had the barrel poking out of the driver's seat, cleaning his weapon, and then a Border Patrol agent passed by and sort of took it upon himself, rather than call the Tohono O'odham tribal police, where it should have been a internal Tohono O'odham Police Department investigation or follow-up. He took it upon himself. And not only that, but he called for backup. And so the bottom line is Arturo Garcia was thrown on the ground, was pepper sprayed, and was taken into custody in front of a busload of children, because by then the school bus showed up. So the children were all traumatized for seeing this tribal elder, for seeing this tribal relative arrested, taken down, and detained by the Border Patrol. Nothing has come of it. My understanding is that the Federal Bureau of Investigation showed up at Arturo's house and told him that he had no legal grounds to sue United States Border Patrol. And so again, it was another attempt to intimidate, harass, and strike fear into tribal members, saying that you are powerless against Department of Homeland Security. And in that case, the nation knew about it. The tribal government knew about it. The legislature knew about it. The executive knew about it. And they did absolutely nothing to protect the tribal member. So what use are they? Because any government, its first responsibility is to protect tribal members. And they did nothing, they are doing nothing, and they will continue to do nothing. And so because the tribal government does nothing, it's up to civil society, it's up to tribal members to come forward and to organize a resistance against human rights violations against the Border Patrol. And I'm telling tribal members, I don't want you to use the vocabulary, I have a complaint against the Border Patrol. A complaint to me is when you order breakfast and the waitress brings your breakfast to you and you complain to the waitress, I wanted my eggs over easy, and you brought them scrambled. That's a complaint. I don't want to hear you saying that you have a complaint against the Border Patrol. You have a human rights violation against the Border Patrol. If it's illegal tailgating you, if it's pulling you over, if it's not giving reason as to why they pull you over, or why, or even why are they pulling a gun on you? So these are fundamental human rights violations that we're talking about. And this is by not only the United States Border Patrol, it's Homeland Security, but it's also the federal government. And where is the nation in raising its voice against Homeland Security in protecting tribal members?
So that incident that you're talking about, it happened 5 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
So what's changed since then?
The only change is it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse because there have been 2 town hall meetings. and there's even being 18 town hall meetings. So you would think in light of 3 public town hall meetings that the Border Patrol would have gotten the message. And we should have seen a decrease in these human rights violations. But the fact that they continue, the fact that there were public meetings, shows that business as usual. That we go to these cosmetic town hall meetings and everybody gets a warm and fuzzy feeling because it looks like the elected officials are doing something when in reality nothing has been changed. Nobody's holding the agents accountable, nor are tribal elected officials holding themselves accountable, because it seems like they are above accountability, and they're not. They're answerable to the people. They're answerable to their voters.
So now this concern over the 2010 incident has brought you to this point where you're more organized. So
Yes.
what's the plan with this?
The plan is one, to talk to tribal members here. Get the information out from us to them, and also get information from them to us. Because what we want to do is we want to go forward and get documentation. Not going through the Domestic Affairs Committee, because we know that that process is strictly cosmetic, nothing's going to happen. So we want to organize and create some kind of resistance, some kind of opposition to United States Border Patrol, not so much their presence on the nation, but this proven, demonstrated pattern of human rights abuses. So we're trying to organize as civilians, as civil society, because the tribal government is doing nothing. If they're doing nothing and will do nothing and have proven they will do nothing, we must step forward to protect ourselves against the Border Patrol, and now protect ourselves against the tribal government.
Okay, so if people are interested in helping out or contacting you
Yeah.
to learn more, how do they do that?
They can contact me. They can contact me through my email, Mike W. Desertwater at yahoo.com. That's probably the most convenient way. If tribal members themselves, non-tribal members, or if they know of anybody else who they think has a legitimate human rights violation, they need to contact the Tohono O'odham human rights observers. And so that's what we're going to try to do, is trying to get this thing going. Because there's a vacuum out there. There's a vacuum out there that's not being filled by the tribal governments. And in that vacuum, because it's out there, the Border Patrol gets away with whatever they want to. You know, 2 tribal members were shot last March. And where's the nation to protect those tribal members?
What's happening with that situation? You were involved in.
We started to, but again, that got nowhere. Tribal members were pretty much not willing to speak with us. And so that's one of the reasons that we're here. Remember that many tribal members work for the nation or work for the federal government. And so there is a real fear by tribal members, because you have to remember the only industry out here is government. Tribal members feel that they are at risk if they come forward and file a grievance, file a human rights violation against the Border Patrol. They fear for their jobs, because the word may get back to their supervisor that this person has a complaint against the Border Patrol. That was demonstrated after the last town hall meeting. A young woman that works at the Cells Hospital, and because that town hall meeting was carried live on the Tohono radio station. One of her co-workers heard this woman come up to the mic and voice a legitimate complaint against the Border Patrol. This was on a Saturday. On Monday morning, her co-worker that was listening to the radio station threatened her, the woman that spoke at the mic, threatened her that because she wasn't from here, about the possibility that she could lose her job. And so people have to fear for retaliation. People have to fear retaliation at the workplace. And so that's the reality. And so something has to be done. So one thing that's being done is we're talking to tribal members or any visitors to the rodeo and fair. We've been talking to people for today's the third consecutive day. And we have had tribal members come forward, and we will do follow-up.
Well, the interesting thing about today's situation too is your neighbor, the next booth is the Border Patrol. Have you had any conversations?
Yes. When I showed up the first day, I went next door and introduced myself. And then one of the agents came over, and we had a very cordial, very frank discussion. His perspective was strictly from law enforcement. My perspective is from a human rights observer and a Tohono, a tribal member. I heard what he had to say, and he was very respectful of what I had to say. And I said, you know what, at least you and I are having a conversation. And so there needs to be a broader conversation. Because you cannot do only, only from the perspective of pure law enforcement. You have to think of the political situation that you're in and also the cultural environment that you're in. And you and possibly your agents, you're absolutely clueless.
So in your conversation, did they bring up why they're here at the rodeo and fair?
No, but obviously as part of their public, the relations presence, But the fact that the Border Patrol has a booth here, clearly demonstrates that as a tribal member, I have the right to be here. If the Border Patrol has permission to be here, I absolutely have the right to be here on there. And I don't want to hear any stink from the Legislative Council. Why did you let Mike Wilson and David Garcia have a booth? Well, my question is, why do you let the Border Patrol have a booth?
Now, has the Tribal Council commented on your involvement in this situation?
Not yet. But I'm sure that there'll be political the repercussions. Because the Tribal Council does not want to hear anybody, especially tribal members, commenting on the lack of accountability from the Tribal Council versus the Border Patrol, or any criticism of the Border Patrol on the nation. Because the Legislative Council continues to rubber stamp anything that the Border Patrol asks for, including permission for 15 permanent surveillance cameras on mountaintops on the nation. And so my fear is that this whole Homeland Security story that's taking place is out of control. And where is the nation in this discussion? The nation is absent by design. The nation is being dictated to by Homeland Security versus being an equal member at the negotiating table. And that's by design.
Are there any other Native nations that are in similar situations, or maybe even other communities that are non-Native?
Well, the entire southwest border. from California to Texas. We live, here's my fear, the entire southwest border, but in particular, let me confine my discussion right now to the Tohono O'odham Nation. The Tohono O'odham Nation is in a transition to becoming Border Patrol Nation. That's my fear. My fear is that
So what does that mean?
what that means is that the Tohono O'odham Nation is surrendering its dignity, its sense of identity, its sense of who we are as a people. It's surrendering all of that to Homeland Security. And we knowingly and we willingly surrender that. So if we become citizens of Border Patrol Nation, who are we? We're nobody. And that's my fear. And so that's why I want to continue this conversation with Homeland Security, with all the tribal governments, community, districts, and the nation, because there's a vacuum on the nation's part. There is a very, very scripted, a very deliberate silence. And in that silence becomes a power vacuum. And that power vacuum is being filled by Department of Homeland Security. And that's why I go back to the analysis, Tohono O'odham Nation becoming Border Patrol Nation, first and foremost. And I don't want to see that happen.